She is my favorite Tennessean, Alexis. So with that, you guys, why don't we just jump into some of what people's thoughts are? So Alexis, when people are asking you, it starts getting into the fourth quarter. So we have some obvious things. We've got holidays coming up. We got Thanksgiving. We're going to have Christmas. You got New Year's. You got holiday parties. You got kids are back in school, and this is when activities and everything starts getting hectic. So for most people, this is one of the busiest parts of the year. We have some seasonality. We have some weather. We got all sorts of things that impact real estate and housing. So when you have buyers coming to you and asking, buyers or sellers, should I do something between now and the end of the year, or do I just push it off into 2025? Where do you go with that conversation?
Well, I always start with, it depends on your circumstance, right? If you need a place to stay, if you need a place to live, then yeah, it's a great time to buy any time of year. And if you really need to sell, or you want to wrap up before the holidays or before the end of the year, then yeah, put your house on the market. So I feel like it's always a good time to put your house on the market or to buy when you're comfortable. There really is no bad time of year. Now, I say that, and I will say that I'm in an area that does have rural properties. So if you're dealing with something that's maybe on 40 acres pasture land, you really want to highlight it well. Sometimes in winter here, vegetation shows brown. So you can still list it in the winter and fall. However, please keep in mind, it's best to get some pictures, drone shots, or just pictures in general when vegetation's green and lush, so people can see what they're looking at. So, and that really applies to any property, pools included, if you're in an area where we get all 4 seasons.
Perfect. So with that, us Californians here, you think in terms of seasons. We don't get these weather seasons where you're like, I'm not going to buy in January. It's buried under snow. Well, some parts of the country, that's a reality. But Jason, what does seasonality look like for us here in Southern California, Arizona, West Coast, Florida, parts of the country that are sunny and you don't really deal with weather? We still get seasonality. What does that look like for buyers and sellers? Jason, we got you. I think you are either on mute or we lost your mic.
There we go. Is that better?
Yeah.
All right. Seasonality for us is, there's less homes coming on the market, right? When I talk to my clients and, they're looking to buy, I'm like, well, they ask that question, should we buy right now? And I'm like, well, it's actually a good time to buy because there's less people looking, right? You have families. A lot of people right now school has started. People are ramping up for the holidays. So the idea of buying a home is not typically top of mind. They're thinking, you know what, we're going to hold off, get through the school year, and then look to start buying, come that March, April timeframe. So there's less competition, but there's also less homes on the market at the same time, because for that same reason, those families that might be selling their home, they're saying, hey, hold off, let's get through the school year. We don't want to move our children in the middle of the year. So those that are selling are typically people that, like our military, who have hard PCS orders that are like, hey, I need to move on this day, and this is why. That's kind of our seasonality. It's just going to be, for the most part, lower competition, but also lower amount of homes on the market. So not as many choices.
And every year is different. So when we talk about, year over year, what does this year look like? Depending on where you're at, I always like to tell people when we're doing these big nationwide shows where you could be anywhere in the country, it is really important that you're dealing with a professional on the real estate and on the mortgage side that's local to you and can tell you. But in general, when we look at the broad national numbers, we're seeing demand slightly down. So last year was down, and it's slightly down from there. We're seeing supply up. Historically, it's still relatively low, but it's up a pretty good chunk in most markets from last year. So with that, Claudia, are you seeing anything different in your market in terms of what sellers need to be prepared for with buyers coming with offers and maybe getting less offers or slower offers, a slower pace? And what does that mean this year specifically for buyers with some of what we're seeing in the market and your market specifically?
Great question. One of my local title reps actually was just in my office not too long ago, and he mentioned that there had been, I think, 60 closings for October, And we're an area of 1,200 to 1,500 agents. So that's really low for our area. But at the same time, as a buyer's agent, I'm seeing that those buyers that are in the entry level pricing, like under 400,000, even under 420,000, is very competitive. The homes that are priced higher in higher price ranges, those are sitting on the market a little bit longer. So I want to say it also depends on your price range that you're looking in, because if you're looking in under the average of the area, you're going to be competing with a lot of other buyers who can only afford to go up as high as your range.
You know, from the loan side, sometimes we get these questions of people saying, well, should I put it off? Is there any relative advantages to any time of the year? People want to talk about seasonality and interest rates. Generally, I've seen some articles that kind of walk through and talk and kind of show that rates will ebb and flow throughout the course of the year. But more importantly, the things that we're dealing with are things that are going on in the economy, going on nationally right now. So right now, in case you guys did not hear, we're going to have an election next week, and there's a couple of people running that can be a little bit polarizing. And we've now gone from last summer, everyone was convinced that Biden's losing his mind, so Trump is going to win. And then they replaced Biden with Kamala, and it was Kamala's going to win. And now everyone is worried that Trump is going to win. So we'll see. It actually looks like it's going to be very close. But that uncertainty from an interest rate perspective makes things a little bit worse. I get people asking all of the time, well, shouldn't I wait till after the election? I don't really know how much of an impact it makes for a buyer or a seller. To Alexis's point, it's either the right time in your life to do this or not. And what's going to happen with that election is going to happen. Control what you can control. We don't really have impact over that. You're going to vote, you're going to do the right thing, and we're going to deal with it. But right now, one of the things in terms of interest rates, if you believe what the financial press is talking about, is that we have interest rates have gone up since we had a nice Fed cut, 50 basis point Fed cut over a month ago, but rates have gone almost straight line up since then. And some of that is reacting to this belief that there's going to be a red wave. So it's important to know that if you're voting, we should all kind of hope that one party at least gets split control between the House and the Senate, because that's kind of the big worry there for markets, is that one party or the other gets full control. They get the full checkbook and things go in that direction. So by next Tuesday, we should have next Wednesday, hopefully we have an idea of what that looks like and things start to settle down. So it's one less piece of uncertainty for the markets, for interest rates, and for anyone thinking of buying or selling a home. Alexis, are you getting much of that, of people thinking or worrying about how election results are going to impact them as a buyer or a seller?
Yes, I am. And also in my part of the country, a lot of people are affected, like everywhere, by the economy too. You know, I'm in Memphis, Tennessee. I'm not in LA or San Diego, right? San Francisco, New York City. We're federal minimum wage, okay? $7 and some change an hour here. So people just in general are concerned. However, you know, I mean, I don't know. You could not wake up tomorrow. You know what I mean? I'm a firm believer in whether you're buying a car, you're getting married, you're buying a house, whatever you're doing that to you seems like a big decision. You just have to make sure that you feel good about it and not have any regrets yourself. You know, weigh it out, see if it's going to be the best for you. It's really truly a personal decision. So people are flipping out. I mean, some people are just they're worry warts. I can't help that, you know?
I've sold a few houses in the winter, and a lot of people, it's mostly because that was their goal for the year and they're trying to make it in before the new year starts.
So they set a New Year's resolution in January and then they waited around until November to make it happen.
Yeah. And they just want to start the year fresh. You know, I know a lot of people say PCS. The clients that I've worked with that have PCS have always been in the summer. So the winter buyers, those are just honestly mostly people who are trying to make that goal a reality.
I'm actually busiest this time of year. The end of quarter four and quarter one are my strongest. So for the folks watching, that is December, January, and February. Busier than summer. And my clients are primarily military PCSing in and out of the base that's in this area. So I have clients that move here and are choose to kind of make this move specifically around the holidays because school's out. And you know how some of these school districts are. I mean, your kid can't miss school. Okay. So they're like, ready to call the cops on you, right? So they choose to PCS or somebody kind of make the move, you know, if they can around the holidays. So that way also the kids aren't like they're coming back depending on your school district either at the beginning of a second semester, right, or right after the break. So it's not just like, hey, who's this new person, especially if it's an older kid, because you know if you PCS with teenagers, it's a hard adjustment when you're moving. You're like the brand new kid and you're a senior, you know. So I kind of see a little bit of an uptick, and also buyers and sellers who are shopping, especially like in months like December, they're serious. You're not out shopping for fun. Like, hey, baby, let's go to Home Goods and get Starbucks and just go
No
look at open
looky-loos.
house. Okay, and it's 40 degrees outside. No, you're shopping for a house around that time of year. You're serious. If you're really talking about putting money down, moving forward with the purchase, buyers and sellers both typically in the colder months are more serious. Holidays, not colder months, holidays.
So you get cold in Memphis. We get
Yeah.
cold in the high desert where Claudia is, but we don't really get like that weather, that blanket of snow that's going to cover a home. If someone is looking at buying a home in one of those markets, I mean, do you get any of that where you have it where it is hard for someone to do a full-blown home inspection and you're just kind of relying on the hope and the faith that underneath all of that snow and weather, the house is going to be in good shape?
Yeah, so while Tennessee is the South, it's the Mid-South. It gets cold around here. And when I moved here, I was shocked. Okay, it's cold. Not Chicago cold, but folks, it gets cold around here. So we get snow. It snows every year, but it's not like, 50 inches like Wisconsin or something, okay? We do get snow, we get ice, and we get, most importantly, freezing temps. Now, it's important depending on where you're moving to. In the winter, something I always try to advise buyers on, and sellers as well need to be aware of this. Your AC, so if you have an HVAC, it's a dual system. You have the AC and the heater. If temps are too cold outside, you're buying the AC in the blind, okay? Because they can't turn it on. They could damage the system. We get down into the teens and stuff here. Nobody's going to be turning on the AC to check it. So do be advised if you're in a colder weather area or you're moving to one that you're unfamiliar with, be aware that most likely you're going to be buying that AC really not knowing. You still have it inspected, okay? And understand I'm a real estate agent, not a home inspector, okay? But you do want to kind of be mindful of that. And also understand that your final walk is going to be critical too, especially if temps drop, because you can have a burst pipe, something like that can happen. Yeah, so you just need to be aware when you're purchasing and when you're selling too. A burst pipe can delay your closing if you're the seller.
So in terms of this time of year, you talk about someone that is looking to buy, they're focused, they're interested, they're committed to buying if they're out and dealing with the weather and all that fun stuff. From when you're advising a buyer writing an offer or when you're advising a seller, sometimes I hear buyers think, well, if someone has their home on the market through the holidays, they must really, really be motivated. Maybe I can lowball them or go in with a lower or a different offer. Jason, do you get any experience with that, and any thoughts or insights for buyers as they're writing an offer? Should they even look at what time of the year that seller has their home on the market as some indicator of motivation or willingness to negotiate? In
our area, that definitely does have some play, but it's not necessarily like, hey, I'm gonna, you're not getting a 30% discount because it's Christmas. But are there a little bit more negotiations? San Diego has been in a pretty strong seller's market since 2012. We've had very low inventory. Sellers haven't really had a lot of or don't tend to do a lot of negotiations. Now, there are periods though throughout the market, throughout the months and that, depending on what's going on in the market and the time of season, where you might come across a seller that is willing to negotiate more. And I think during the Christmas time, you do see a little bit more willing to, hey, let's talk this over, right? As I think Claudia was kind of mentioning, it also depends on the price point, right? If you're that first-time home buyer price point for San Diego, you're going to be still competing with a lot of people. We have over 3 3.2 million people here in the San Diego County. And as of today, we have less than 4,000 single family homes on the market, right? So, and that's considered a lot.
And how does that compare to, say, 2 years ago at the
Well,
lows? What did inventory look like for you in San Diego County?
COVID, 2019, pre-COVID, we were and that was still definitely a seller's market, right? We were averaging between 5,200 to about 6,400 homes, depending on the season. So we're still sitting well under 1,000 homes than we were in 2019.
And with going through
with
COVID,
the higher interest rates, right?
During COVID, you were probably 2,000, 2,500. So it's definitely up. It's definitely worth noting that inventory is up, but like you said, for most areas, it is below 2019. And the reason why people like to point out that number is because that was kind of the last time we saw a normal market before you saw the COVID changes with ultra low interest rates. A lot of people could afford, and a lot of people got pulled forward into that. Claudia, in your market, are you seeing something similar? Has inventory normalized in the high desert a little bit? And are we back to 2019 levels?
No, I would say that our inventory is still low. I mean, we're one of the more affordable places in Southern California to buy, and it's still competitive. It's still difficult to find move-in condition homes for less than 400,000. And I mean, 400,000 is a stretch for a lot of people.
It is. That's the crazy thing. I was looking just the numbers. If you look at, we're talking about 2019 when we had these levels of inventory, interest rates were a good bit lower, or at least 2.5% lower, even though they weren't those COVID lows. And home prices were about 50% lower. Your mileage may vary in your market, but take 50% off a home price and take interest rates down 2%, it makes the affordability a lot better. So I always like to point out, a lot of people say, well, there's no demand, no one's buying, or no one wants to buy. There's that idea, or the difference between willing demand and able demand. We don't have any lack of people that would like to buy. My phone rings all day, every day. And a lot of times we have to tell people, hey, you only qualify for 500, and in your market, 650 is what it takes to make it happen. So from that perspective, that sales volume that we're seeing is down is not necessarily indicative of demand where people just don't want to buy homes anymore. It's that measure of affordability. And there's only three things that can happen that can improve affordability. Home prices can drop, wages can go up, or interest rates can go down. And in the short run, really the only hope we have is for interest rates to potentially go lower. So we'll see how that plays out through the rest of the year.
Going back to the seller motivation, I don't think that it's really the weather or the time of the year. I think it's more of the seller situation. I have two closings coming up. One is at 400,000, one is at 480,000, and the people at 480,000, it was an inherited home. The home needs updating. It needs some repairs. So they were very flexible on the price. They offered almost the full 3% for closing costs. They did all of the repairs on our request list. But then on the other end, with the lower price point, we had to go above the list price to get that house in escrow, and they're not doing any repairs. So I think it's really more of what the seller situation is and how motivated they are and how long they've been on the market.
When we were talking before the show, we were talking about taxes. Do you guys, I would think probably more sellers than buyers, but does it ever come up where someone has a deadline where they have to get their home sold by the end of the year, whether it's the 2 out of 5 year exemption that they lived in the home and it has to be sold, something that they want to have happen for this tax year if they have gains on an investment property? Is that a motivating factor for sellers, some sellers at this point of the year?
I've had deals close 2 days later to be in the new year because of that.
So it can go either way. They did not want to close this year. They said, I will put my house under contract with you, but we're not going to close until we get
Yes.
into
And
January.
it's really, I've only seen it happen with sellers. I haven't really seen it with buyers.
Tell me this, you guys. So in a transaction, you work with a number of professionals, lenders like myself, home inspectors, appraisers, repair people. Is that something that comes into the equation this time of year? People take vacations, they're gone, they're less available, taking time off. Alexis, you don't seem amused by that question. Do you have a harder time with timelines of getting things done? Is it any slower getting a transaction done this time of year?
Well, I'll be honest. It's like I'm like two Americas were on this live. You guys in SoCal with this real estate market talk. That is SoCal. I know in my market, we're sitting parked and posted. These houses aren't moving that fast. San Diego, 12-year strong sellers market. Yeah, not here. Buyers, you want to buy. Great time. You get everything paid. You want to go a little under, you sure can. But with regards to vacations and stuff, actually it's opposite here. The market slows down. We have weather. So weather plays a part in stuff. You know, people, I mean, if you've ever lived anywhere cold, you're not really trying to go out and do stuff. Okay. I mean, it is cold. You're trying to stay warm and cuddled up and booed up or whatever you're doing. So, I get a lot of calls from vendors like handymen, painters, landscapers. Hey, got any work for me? Stuff like that. People slow down here in the winter. In an aggressive market, like during the COVID market we were talking about, here inventory still slowed down. It was still competitive, right? Hyper competitive, but stuff slowed down a lot. So it's slower here in the Memphis metro area. School plays a part with our real estate market. Most people here list in the spring and summer, and that's just it. So stuff does slow down. Sometimes it's hard to find. For some people who are looking for work, they have to become competitive. So loan officers, no, they're always going to answer the phone. You know, a closing attorney, always going to answer the phone. Real estate folks, yeah. But when you're coming for vendors and stuff, I like to tell my clients here, the winter's a good time to do work on your house because you could get deals. People want money for the holidays, right? I know I'm about to do some landscape work to my house. Typically people do this sort of stuff that we're about to do in the spring. Nah, I got a guy, you know, he's willing to take a steep discount. So yeah.
In terms of that, how about someone who's out shopping for homes? People are busier through the holidays. So you have a buyer, they want to buy a home. And they're like, cool, here's the list of 4 homes that meet our criteria. We want to go and see them. Is it harder to schedule those showings with sellers who may be traveling out of town, any of that stuff? We got Alexis is saying no and Claudia is saying yes.
Not for me. And again, it's a busier time for me. Usually sellers, if you're selling your house, you got a Christmas tree up in there with presents and kids. Okay. Other than Christmas Eve and Christmas Day, your house is available. You're trying to get that thing sold for whatever reason in life. You need to sell it. You're trying to get it sold. I feel it's easier to get in homes around the holidays versus the summer where somebody's like, well, I'm just going to put it on the market to see. Yeah, I got a pool. Let's see how fast it sells. You know, all right, you're not serious. That guy with the pool in the winter, he's ready. He's like, let's go. All right. When do you want us out? We'll be out drinking hot cocoa in the van on the corner.
I think it depends on how well the listing agent has educated or prepared the seller to expect showings. And so, you know, sometimes there are sellers out there who might be hosting family for the holidays. And then you'll say, you know, what days don't work for you. And then you'll make sure that the other days are available. But it really just depends on what the agent and the seller agreed on. And then if there's access to the property. I mean, there's still sellers out there who want to be the ones providing the access and not have a lockbox. So it just depends on the seller.
You know, from the real estate side, you guys, the timing and the scheduling is more with the seller, with the buyer. When is everyone available? What I like to tell people on the loan side about this time of year, we do have some interesting things. We have these holidays that we have days that may not count for your rescission. So whether you're looking at refinancing, you signed your docs, but we got 2 extra days. So we got a holiday in the middle of that. Your closing disclosure goes out on your purchase. You have to sign that 3 days before you can sign your loan docs. And again, these holidays get in the middle of that. one of the things that drives me bonkers every year, escrow and title people, they've got the good life, because every year I will make a call over to an escrow company at noon about 2 weeks before Christmas, and they all got to go home early to get prepared for their Christmas party. I think it's nice to have a Christmas party, but to get a whole half day off to prepare for the Christmas party is a little wild. But I hear that, see it all the time. So it's not to take shots at anyone, but it happens in real estate companies. It happens in mortgage companies also, where people do get these little half days. You have to account for those extra days. So much like Alexis was saying, from my end, I don't really ever see a slowdown until we get to January, because what happens is a lot of people didn't want to start that transaction in December, but a lot of people want to finish it up in December. So November, December ends up pretty busy. January, because no one really wanted to start anything in December, is a little bit slower. And then we get to that whole situation is, once the Super Bowl kicks off, now things are thawing out and people want to get started. So Jason, why don't you tell us a little bit about that? What do you see as a difference? I mean, some people are going to look at it going, I had my New Year's resolution, I want to get this done by the end of the year. Other people are like, I'm not doing anything till the end of the year. I just want to finish, hit my bonus, and get into the new year. What do you see as the difference between people that are focused on getting it done before the end of the year and sort of those more on top of it, New Year's resolutionaries that January 1, I'm buying a house, and they get serious and get started on it?
Well, I mean, I feel like we already kind of touched on this. I always feel like the people that are selling before the new year are really just, there's a pressure point that's kind of like pushing them to get out. You know, either a job, some sort of family situation where, you know, I don't know, they're, you know, taking care of family. There's a life-changing event that's causing them to move. I don't find a lot of people that are having to buy or having to sell that are just like, hey, it's a great time to do it right now. You know, we're going to retire right now. Like, no, they're normally, especially even retirement, they're normally waiting till the new year. And then, you know, as you said, I normally see January as a fairly kind of a dead month. And then as we get towards that end of February, all of a sudden it's like the spring market. And in some ways, COVID has made that move up. I would say that before COVID, our spring market used to be kind of more towards March, maybe even the beginning of April. And I don't know if it's just I don't know what caused it, but now it seems like our spring market starts earlier, and we become here in San Diego, we become very busy typically in February. And then by June, like our actual summertime, there's like a little bit of a pause. And then that third quarter picks up again, and then fourth quarter. So I kind of see a little bit of a, I don't know, loop-de-loop, if you will.
So both of those, would you guys agree that both the fourth quarter and the first quarter, they're slower, but they have sort of a qualitatively different? Alexis is not going to agree because she says her fourth quarter is really busy, but it's a qualitatively different buyer and seller. They're a little more motivated, a little bit more serious about it. There may be less of them, but they are about their business on that time. Claudia, did you have some thoughts there on sort of what that first quarter buyer looks like? A little bit different. Maybe they're waiting for tax return to come in. Maybe they're kicking off their new year with their resolution, and they are serious and they're going to do it now. But what are your thoughts on that?
I think that a lot of people who maybe didn't get into escrow in December, they end up taking that last week off the home search, and then they pick up again. I don't want to say the first week of January, but towards maybe like the 7th, and then they pick up right where they left off. So they do kind of take a break in between. And, you know, a lot of people tend to go out of town for the holidays. So they're not here. They're not planning on doing any home search stuff. And they just call me when they come back into town. But I would say the motivated people are continuing the search.
Well, how about the flip side of that? And Jason, maybe you all in your market, the flip side of that, do you get sellers at any point through the holidays sometimes say, hey, we're just going to pull it off and wait till the beginning of the year? Do you see much of that?
I have, where like it got listed kind of the August, September, even like October, kind of those 3 months, depending on the price point where it got listed, and it didn't just come. A lot of sellers are still in the mindset of the COVID market, where if a home sat on the market for longer than 7 days, either there's something wrong with it, or it's not being advertised well enough. They're immediately thinking that, hey, something's wrong, even though our average days on market, now that is a huge variety of price points in San Diego County. I mean, we span a huge spectrum.
Huge spectrum.
Yeah, it's a huge spectrum. So, you have to kind of take it with a grain of salt, but the average days on market is like 28 days. Now, if you're looking at the first time home buyer kind of spectrum, they still are selling, probably within 10 days. So it's just kind of going back to the educating of the seller and saying, hey, this is based off your price point and time of the year. This is kind of what you should expect. And sometimes they want to shoot for the stars, and shooting for the stars and selling it for, top dollar when you're rolling into, a time where people are not looking as much and settling down for the holidays and school starting. They may not get that. And so we've had people who are like, you know what, we're going to pull off. And it's like, okay. I mean, if you're trying to get top dollar, listing in February, March in this area is probably a better time to do that. If you can wait, that's the key though, right? Like, do you have that time?
I wish I had the chart here, because if you look, there is not just a seasonality towards the volume of transactions, more people wanting to buy in the spring and the summer. There's a seasonality to price appreciation, at least in the nationwide market. And I've seen it broken down by submarkets. But when you look at it, most of the appreciation happens between about March and August. So, and that's true even in a terrible market. Go back to 2008, probably the worst real estate market we've ever had. It wasn't that homes were going up more in those months; they were going down less than in other months. There's always a seasonality to it. So, Alexis, do you feel like there's a benefit to buyers getting ahead of that? If they've decided, hey, this is the right point in my life, I'm married, we just had a kid, we got promotions at work, we can afford it, this is the right time in our life. Would you ever advise someone to sort of push that window before we see the spring and summer buying season and more of the appreciation?
Yes, I do. And I say this because, again, in my market, stuff is sitting. I think across a lot of the southern states, places like Texas and stuff, a cream puff house is going to go multiple offers regardless of market, wherever it's located. The house that has it all. But yes, you can definitely get a little bit more bang for your buck. A house now, sometimes here in the colder areas, outdoor pools. If you're really wanting a swimming pool, probably not in the winter. It's harder. A lot of people don't sell here when, it's not really fun to look at a swimming pool, when it's 15 degrees outside. You know what I mean? So if you're wanting a pool, a home with a pool, then look for the spring and summer. But most houses, and sometimes homes with land, like I spoke about at the beginning of the live. But just a standard home, 3-bedroom, 2-bath, 4-bedroom, 3-bath, like that. Yes, it's a great time. And also in an area where homes, if you're currently considering shopping, you don't know if you should start now, or if your schedule allows, or later, ask your real estate agent how many days on market are homes sitting in your market area, right? Jason talked 28 days. If homes are sitting in your market area for 90 days, somebody right now's house has been sitting 90 days. They've already missed that summer. The summer market's already gone by. Those people are definitely trying to get those houses out of here before the holidays, before the end of the year. Like Claudia was talking about, sometimes people want to wait. So a deal can definitely be had depending on how many days on market, because those sellers that are sitting, not all of them, sometimes they just want to play around a little bit. But some of them, if everyone is sitting for a while, yes, you could get closing costs paid, a refrigerator, agent commission. That's not part of the conversation. Definitely needs to be part of the conversation, right? In a slower market, or when stuff is sitting, sellers are serious about selling. It'll be easier for you to get agent commission paid, less money out of your pocket potentially. So it's a great time. I don't know. I think anytime's good as long as you're ready. But if homes are sitting.
And one of the things that, that we saw when rates dipped, so we went basically July, August, first part of September, rates straight line down. We were 0.75% to 1% better. And we did see more buyers going, okay, now I can afford at 6.25 when I couldn't afford at 7.25 or 7.5, wherever we ended up at the peak last year. And right now we're seeing sort of the flip side of that. So we've all heard this advice out there. Marry the house, date the rate. There's some terrible advice in there, but there is some truth to that. Well, like we talked about earlier in the show, when you're ready to buy, ready and able to buy, go ahead and buy. So for those people that are not forcing the issue and saying, hey, I'm doing a 2-1 buy down and praying that in the next 24 months I get to refinance, then it can be a good time, because we've seen with the application data that the Mortgage Bankers Association puts out every week, it's rate sensitive. So there are more people applying for mortgages, more people buying, putting in offers on properties every time those rates dip. So if you're well qualified and you can bite the bullet and take a slightly higher interest rate, you're likely to have some less competition and the ability at some point in the future to refinance. The LA Times ran an article 3 or 4 months ago before we saw that nice drop down in interest rates. And they went through 3 or 4 terrible stories of home buyers who were told, buy, because your rates are coming down. You'll have the ability to refinance. And to that point, they hadn't. And all 3 or 4 of them were in a bad spot. So don't misconstrue what I'm saying. I'm saying if you are well qualified and you can afford the higher rates with no issue, there's probably going to be an opportunity to get lower, and you may have a benefit of having some less competition. So we talked about the weather that you have in Tennessee. One thing that we have not talked about that becomes seasonal here, we are about ready to head into wildfire season here in Southern California. And you look at it and you go, well, that's crazy. Why would that be an issue? Things dry out in the summer, but when we get our Santa Ana winds here in Southern California at this part of the year, you get these really bad wildfires. And I've had 2 to 3 transactions over the last 5-6 years have significant delays, because what happens is when they put out the federal disaster areas, they do it by the county level. So I had a property that was in Long Beach, less than a mile from the beach, that we couldn't close because we had a fire up in the hills. And until the fire was put out and they could declare an end of the disaster the way that it was done, so those folks, they were scheduled to close 2 days before Thanksgiving. Docs were out, docs were signed. I think we ended up closing the first week of December. So depending on where you're at, Southern California being one of them, a lot of the West Coast, Colorado's had wildfires, Washington's had wildfires. It can be an issue, and it is a little bit odd the way the federal government handles those disaster areas and when they will allow funding loans after that. Because what they don't want to have happen is fund the loan on your property and then it burns down before you even get to move in. So it is for your benefit, but it can be difficult and problematic, especially during the holidays when you're trying to get into a home. You guys have any thoughts or anything that we haven't covered today that you think someone considering buying between now and the end of the year could benefit from?
I think Alexis had posted in our little chat assumptions. I think that's probably,
That's right.
I think that's a really good thing to bring up. I'll let you talk about it.
I love assumptions. I do. I really do. First of all, in a slower market, if you're about to sell your house, right, list your home on market, and you have purchased your home using your VA loan entitlement, do talk to your real estate agent about listing it with an assumption, right? In my market, homes are sitting, right? Kind of hitting at that. If you aren't getting it, you aren't picking up what I'm putting down here, okay? But when I start advertising that the listings have assumptions, right, we're telling everybody that those homes typically sell faster, all right? But assumptions are great. However, I did want to touch on if you are wanting to be in the house before the end of the year, right? Considering how many weeks we have left, an assumption might not get you in there by the end of the year, okay? But it's also for talking about December and you're maybe not ready. Your lease maybe's up in February or March. December might be a good time to start aggressively looking at properties if you're interested in purchasing for an assumption because of how long, depending on the loan servicer, closings can take. So a good opportunity. However, the flip side of that is if you are a seller, again, if you're trying to close before the end of the year, you have a deadline by January, whenever, then do talk to your loan servicer and your real estate agent about timelines on that, because you don't want to, be jammed up waiting to the end. But yeah, assumptions are great. You should do a live on assumptions, Josh.
We have done one before, but it is a topic that continues to come up because rates remain elevated. When there's
And
loans out
biting.
there at 2.5%, 2.75%, 3.5%. So if you have a
That's
high VA loan from that era of 4%, and you're still a couple percent below where the market is at right now, and there's
And
a pretty
sellers,
big
I'm going to
value
say
in it.
this: if you have a lot of equity in your house, right, your gap is like 100,000, 200,000. Look, don't think people don't have that money. Don't. I'm telling you, people, to get those 2% rates, those 3% rates, they're going to make it happen. People are pulling cash. I don't know where these people are getting this money, okay? But they're able to get the money. So even if you have a large equity gap and you're like, nobody's going to have 200, 300,000, you don't know.
They sold their
So-
house in California.
That's right. Or they just,
they
whatever.
moved to Memphis.
Hey, enough with the Memphis talk.
All right.
You know what else we should probably remind people is, if you're in escrow, to curb your holiday spending, so that it doesn't throw a wrench in your pre-approval or anything like that while you're buying.
Holiday spending, and whether it's on a credit card, whether it was money that you had in the bank that's no longer in the bank, these have become issues. On the positive side, Claudia, I actually had one about 2.5 years ago that we're like, these people made decent money. They made, combined husband and wife, $12,000-$13,000 a month, and there was like two $10,000 deposits in their account. We're like, hey, what is that? Oh, my dad gives us each $10,000 a year for Christmas. And I said, I would like to be in your family. But if you are lucky and you're in one of those families where you get big Christmas gifts, just know that you may need to document that. Oftentimes we have to document Christmas bonuses, holiday bonuses, year-end bonuses. So those are good things. They can help you in buying a home, covering your closing costs. But there are some unique things there that happen towards the end of the year that may lead to a little bit of additional documentation. So anything that changes, anything out of the norm, just be aware that your lender is probably going to look for it and look at it. And in terms of that spending, understand that there is undisclosed debt monitoring going on. So don't think that, hey, my lender pulled my credit report last month, so we're going to be okay if I go and buy everyone the great Christmas present they want, or if I go to the Lexus dealer and buy a new car or any of that fun stuff. It will come up. I had a friend in the mortgage business 2 years ago that had a salesperson told their client on New Year's Eve that this is it. We have to make these sales, and it's going to be like $10,000 more if you come back tomorrow for these cars. And they bought 2 cars on New Year's Eve, and they did not get to close their purchase or their refinance because they no longer qualified for either one of them. So it is a real thing. Be aware of it. Jason, we had talked a little bit about the seasonality, and you had some data here. Do we need to go back to the beginning of these slides, or is that the one you were looking for?
I can show you. I'll show you detached. So this is San Diego. This is from September. So our data is always a month behind. But if you look at the kind of the inventory of homes, you can see how I have to look at my screen just for visual. But if you start at the left, it looks like it's starting in around September of 2022. And then it works its way across. In the middle, there's 2023. But you can see how the inventory drops and starts to rise back up and drops. And that one, the other one I wanted to show you is price of original price received. And if you look in the middle, you can see where in the middle of the summer, it's pretty high. It kind of drops down, goes back up. So you can see that even here in San Diego, with our competition and everything, there's still discounts, right? Because that's essentially what you're seeing here. As of September of last month, on average of San Diego County, people were receiving 97.9% of the original list price, which means, they're not getting what they're asking. The one that shows the best, though, seasonality is the actual listings by month. And as you can see this across several years, how it spikes up and then drops off and spikes up and drops off over and over. And at the peak here is our summer months, and then where it drops off is right around December.
And this, a couple of things I like to point out. This is incredibly consistent. So he's showing us San Diego data, but I can tell you every market looks like this. The peaks may be higher or lower. The valleys may be higher or lower on that data, but the fact that the highest percentage of activity at the highest percentage of asking prices is going to happen during those spring summer buying season, and then it cools down to the rest of the year. So everything presents an opportunity. So just being aware of it and working with your professionals and talking through it. This is really important data to know and be aware of. So kind of what we've gone through, you should know that if you're looking in the fourth quarter, you're going to have less homes to pick from. But those homes are probably going to sell for a lower percentage of the asking price. You may have a more motivated seller. You may have to deal with some crap in terms of snow being on the houses or any of the seasonality and that timing being more difficult. But there's definitely opportunities here for those people that are motivated. So we actually have a couple of good questions here, a couple of interesting questions. So we're going to see who wants to be the first to answer them. We went through it a little bit at the top of the show, but John Stafford says, will the election have any impact on y'all's markets? So let's start in Tennessee. Does it matter? Does it matter? So someone's going to win the election next week. If red or blue wins, is that going to impact your housing market or make any difference in home prices, the number of sales happening next year? And probably when we look at this, it is harder to say out 2 years. So we'll be midway through the next president's term when that comes. But in the next 3, 6, 9 months, do any of the three of you see a significant change in your markets based off of who wins next week?
Okay, well, you said Tennessee first, so I'll talk.
Absolutely. I knew we wouldn't have to beg you to talk.
You know what? Guys, there's something going on in the background you guys don't know about these coastal elitists, but we're not going to talk about that right now. Anyway, so depending on who wins next week, I mean, my market could kind of be in shock for about a week. And I'm not talking politics, okay? But I'm just saying it could be a shock for about a week, depending on who wins. But it's really not going to have any true effect. Really, something that's affecting my area is how people are feeling about the economy, right? So if you're in an area more like Memphis, cities like Memphis, Rust Belt areas, for example, too. Yes, the economy, how long, depending on whoever's elected, how long until things start turning around, who knows? But I'll tell you this, it's not, if you're hoping something's going to change the next day, it's not. So, will it affect?
How about our Californians? What do you guys think? Any changes coming to your market based off of either or winning next Tuesday?
I'll go. I don't think we're going to see anything. I mean, San Diego's pretty diverse, pretty large, pretty well mix of people, and I don't think it's going to have any effect.
I think whoever's sitting on the fence is going to get off if they really want to buy, and those who were just talking about doing something are going to go back to talking about doing something and not do anything.
And from my perspective, the thing I would say is the only thing that I think would have a big impact on the market would be if we get a blue wave or a red wave. If either one of them was to win the House, Congress, and the Oval Office, I don't think markets are going to like that. Right now, if you look at the betting markets, the risks of that happening are for Trump winning and the Republicans winning the House and the Senate, and the markets don't like that. The stock market has done well, but the bond market is looking at that going, we don't really like anyone having an open checkbook and being able to more likely pass spending legislation. So what I would say is you may have some more uncertainty if that were to happen, either party, if either one of them gets full control of everything. Now we got to look into the first quarter of next year before they get to take office and then start enacting or trying to pass some of the policies. So let's hope for a little bit of gridlock, and then there won't be as much of an impact. And I think we'll get a little bit of normalization in where bonds have been here. So on that note, Siete follows up with another one.
sorry. I
Yeah.
think it sounds more like how it's going to change institutions and what they do. I was referring to like the consumer aspect. Whoever's going to buy is still going to buy. Now they might not be able to afford as much, but I think what I'm hearing when you replied, Josh, is more of the institution side of it. Like, what are the lenders going to do? The people that are loaning the money.
Well, it's not so much what the lenders are going to do. It's what the market is doing in terms of interest rates. We've seen interest rates higher. It's going to make activity go lower. And part of over the last 7 to 10 days, whether you read the Financial Times, the Wall Street Journal, a lot of it is conjecture, but by market insiders are saying the market is a little bit concerned about a red wave and what that would mean spending wise and not reining in spending. Not that either one of these candidates has proposed raising in spending. They want to spend on very different things, but they both want to spend. So from that perspective, there's some fear that Trump would be inflationary, which is interesting. And it's mainly based off of the tariffs. We're in a service-based economy. The things that would be impacted by tariffs make up 6% of our economy. So 94% of the economy wouldn't be impacted at all if he wins and if he passes the tariffs. So we got a bunch of ifs there. And what is it actually going to impact? And for me, most importantly, I look at this and I read these articles and I go, I don't know why the market is having that expectation when we already had a free 4-year preview. We saw it. He hasn't changed his mind of what he says he wants to do now versus what he wanted to do 4 years ago. It was the same then as it is now. So if it wasn't inflationary then, it shouldn't be inflationary now. But there's definitely, when I think in terms of what are buyers likely to do, the only thing from that election that could impact that is how does it move interest rates? That's the only thing that's going to have much of an impact in the short run, because I can't see someone going, oh, Kamala won, I'm going to run out and buy a house tomorrow. Maybe there are some people that love her so much that they think now I can breathe a sigh of relief and I'm ready to buy a home. Or someone on the flip side, oh, thank God Trump won, I'll stay in the United States, I'm going to go buy a house. So from that perspective, I think the thing that's likely to happen is markets are going to look at it, and that will have some impact on interest rates, higher or lower. And we've seen that absolutely impacts all of our businesses in terms of how people are comfortable with the affordability of buying a home that they want to buy. So with that, we have the question. Siete says, what would rates look like after the presidential election? And the answer is kind of the same, because I think they're kind of wrapped up in that, is if we get certainty, meaning that we don't have one of these disputed elections that runs on for 2, 3, 4 weeks or worse, and we don't know, if we get certainty next Wednesday, and hopefully you have a little bit of a split Congress, and with that, I think the market will adjust and move forward fairly quickly. If something drags out really long or one side wins all three, you could see a negative reaction. So the good news is by this time next week, or close to this time next week, another day, 8 days, we'll have an idea of what that looks like, and no one needs to guess anymore of what that looks like. So you guys, we've been going for almost 53 minutes. We like to keep these at an hour. We've covered a lot. It's a big topic. I love that Jason was able to pull up that data and we could show you guys a little bit of what that seasonality looks like and whether you can use that to your benefit between now and the end of the year. But before we wrap it up, I'm going to start with Claudia. I'm not going to start in Tennessee this time. I'm going to let Claudia go first with final thoughts on year-end buying at the beginning of next year, New Year's resolutions. What do you think anyone watching tonight would benefit with knowing?
I think if you're a seller and you're deciding whether or not to list right now or wait until after the holidays, I would just say, everybody's going to list after the holidays. Get ahead of your competition and do it now, and be realistic with your pricing, be aggressive with your pricing so that you can start the new year in escrow. And with the buyer side, I would recommend, negotiating with your agent on their compensation, negotiating with the seller for closing costs and repairs and anything else that you need help with. So this is the time to get all of those things paid for.
Perfect. Jason, what are your thoughts?
I would say pretty similar to Claudia's. If you're a buyer and you're kind of like, hey, I'm on the fence, I'm waiting for the election for whatever reason, I'd say you should be buying now. Like, get out there, start looking. Competition's lower. If you buy something that you can afford, right? Like where your payment's comfortable, But if you're using your VA loan, realize that if rates do drop in 6 months, a year, whatever, you do have that EARL. You have that capability of going down to whatever that rate might be at that time. But you're buying today when there's lower competition and getting in, because if you're waiting to that spring market, you're like, the other 100,000 people that are going to be like, hey, it's summer again, let's get in there. And then you're back to that same competition, the multiple offers, the likelihood of negotiating something during that time frame is a whole lot less than it is right now. And then from a seller standpoint, kind of depends on their situation. If they're looking for top dollar, I still think that it's best to list during the spring market. But if you need to get out, or depending on your situation, price aggressively and list now. The key is getting people in your door. Not so much that that's the price you're going to sell at. It's to get them in the door to see your place, and then you start your negotiations.
Perfect. Alexis, final thoughts?
I have to say something. We talked about holidays. We did not talk about decorations. We have 3 real estate agents on here, and we did not bring up holiday decor when it comes to.
Clearly, we don't get into the decor too much. Do you, Jason? I don't. Do you, Alexis?
I do when it comes
to my own house, or for
for your own house.
Selling it? Oh,
okay,
yeah.
no, I'm talking about for listings. Okay, when you're selling your house. Okay, Grinch trees are cute, but you can't have 5 Christmas trees that people can. It's a maze. If your house is tight, cut it down. Not too much.
Are you talking about yourself, Alexis?
I'm sorry?
I said, are you talking about yourself? Don't you have?
Okay, I am going to have 4 trees, but this is not about me. Back to this. So just be tasteful with the decorations, not too much. Remember, you don't want to distract away from your house. But I always think it's a good time as long as you're ready. But I will say this: if you're not ready right now, we talked a lot about the holidays, but Q1 is also January. So right now, November is a good time to start making plans, right? You can start getting everything in order to have something ready. If you can't do it right now at the holidays, right? Thanksgiving and Christmas, you can start everything. Wheels are turning. Guess what? Josh is working in December. I'm working. We're all working still in December. And just like Claudia said, sometimes people come back around January 7th. So it's a good time, as going off what Jason said, to kind of get ahead of that spring market. If you're in a more competitive area, you can start now planning stuff out to take advantage of the January market, and to see what you can get. But yeah, tone down the Christmas decorations. Oh, and outside too. Too many inflatables. If you're listing your house for sale.
And look at that. We were specifically talking about buying through the holidays here. If you don't want to deal with the holidays, you want to get past the holidays, that lull does extend into January, first part of February. So if you want to have a New Year's resolution, you want to get a tax refund, you want your year-end bonus, you want to get all the way through the holidays, there is still a window of opportunity there. And much like Alexis said, for all of us, we get people that reach out, I don't want to waste your time. I'm not sure I want to meet. Planning is one of the most valuable things we can do with you, and give you clarity on what's possible, where you want to be, where you need to go. Both Claudia and Jason both mentioned knowing your market, pricing aggressively. So one of the things that this will be shocking to you guys coming from a data guy, a numbers geek, make sure that the person that you're listening to, fantastic, they have an opinion of where the market is. Make sure they have the data. All realtors have great data. The boards of realtors put this data together so that they're not just telling you, hey, you can't offer 5% less than that house. Maybe they can show you, well, in this neighborhood, the last 12 sales have sold for 98.9% of list price. You want to have a reason, not them just telling you their opinion, because you would be shocked. Many people in the mortgage and real estate business have opinions that are completely unfounded, and they can't tell you where they're coming from and show you that data. So I would say just rely on the data. Your pros that you're working with are going to know that market, your local market, and they're going to be able to tell you what they believe and why they believe it in terms of numbers, so that you can come to your conclusion about what works for you. But thank the 3 of you for being here. Kind of a wide-ranging topic and a lot of stuff that we covered, but appreciate you guys sharing your knowledge and wisdom. I think we are off next week. In 2 weeks, we will be back with another set of pros and another wonderful topic. So again, thank you guys for joining us. Thank you, pros, for sharing your knowledge. See you guys next week.